G'day and welcome back to another episode here on the Hidden Why podcast. This is episode 1136. It's my interview with Gary F. Bengier. He is a fictional author, but he's got an amazing background in tech, Silicon Valley, startups. He understands AI, but he now has written books looking at the future of AI technology, robotics, and how that looks for humanity as a whole. I found it a very fascinating, insightful conversation. We talk about the journey to 2125, one of his books. We also talk about the other book, but more importantly, what that means for the social constructs of society, what that means for the future of our jobs, how that plays out, and how this has an important role in understanding the challenges potentially that we're going to face, and maybe some of the solutions that we need to come up with to help tackle some of those challenges, because it's here, it's staying, and it's rapidly advancing. So really looking forward to hearing your comments about this one. Enjoy my conversation with Gary F. Bengier, and we'll catch you at the other end. G'day, Gary. Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here today.
Leigh, I'm delighted to join you and your audience. Looking forward to having a conversation.
From the beautiful San Francisco.
Well, it's foggy out here today. I think your sunny coast has probably got better weather than ours.
It's been beautiful, actually, coming into spring. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show. Fiction author and writing on some interesting topics about, I guess, technology advancements, the future of AI, the future of us as a human race.
Yes.
Tell us what got you into writing these books in context to your background.
Yeah, well, my background is maybe follows some of yours too, because I see that as I look at your background, Leigh, I see that you're also a writer. What is it? About a decade ago, you wrote 4 pillars of success: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And then was it you had a book that came out in 2020, The Ultimate Life Map, among others that you've written. And so it seems like you're also on this journey of figuring out what's important. And maybe that partly explains what I've been about. I had a career of about 25 years in tech.
Yeah.
Everything from bioscience in the 1980s, chip design, electronic design automation, computer peripherals, streaming video over the internet, and then the internet with the company eBay, which I took.
Yeah.
I was the CFO, took them public in 1998, and I
Wow.
hung around there for enough years. So we had thousands of employees and, over $100 billion in stuff being sold on the site. And then I decided that okay, I've done that long enough, and so I embarked on a different direction. Because I think it's important to repot yourself every once in a while.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
so I went back to school. I got an astrophysics backfield in astrophysics degree,
Wow.
not as an adult, but as a not as an adult student, but as a real student, actually sitting for all the labs and taking all the exams. And then I got interested in philosophy, and I backfilled a philosophy degree. I was focusing on philosophy of mind, and I got a master's in philosophy.
Wow.
And so then I was thinking about other kinds of issues, things like consciousness and how do we find meaning and purpose in life? And so that's sort of how I got to this place where I decided to become a writer. Some of these ideas about human consciousness, what is that you at the center of Leigh? What is that? What is that I, right? And so I was thinking deeply about consciousness, and I realized that some of these ideas that were out there in the narrow silo of philosophy really weren't widely getting out to the public. And so I wrote a novel to explore
Gotcha.
those ideas.
Wow.
And so that one came out in 2020. That book was titled
Journey to 20.
no, that's the second book. The
Oh, that's
the
the
first
latest
one
one.
was
Right.
yeah, the first book was Unfettered Journey.
Uh-huh.
And that book actually went on to win 14 book awards, including Best Spiritual Fiction, Best Science Fiction, Best Adult Fiction. I was very pleased that it won the Eric Hoffer Award. He's a famous U.S. philosopher, so in his memory, this
Mm.
award. And so the book did very well, and it was maybe timely at the for one of the topics with AI and robotic consciousness, which was already a topic back in 2020.
Yep.
And there are a lot of folks saying, well, they're going to be the singularity is near. The robots are going to be conscious right around the corner, and that's sort of not the idea. If you're studying philosophy, there's something called the hard problem of consciousness. David Chalmers, a famous philosopher, coined that term, and so the idea in philosophy is that consciousness is something we really don't even understand.
Yeah.
There are like 1,000 um, legitimate theories about what consciousness is. And so,
So when you researched consciousness and wrote this book, how did you portray that?
well, what I tried to do is to bring up the real issues about that in a format that people could relate to.
Mm.
And so, Unfettered Journey is about a AI scientist whose job it is to create robot consciousness, and he doesn't think he can do it, even though
Right.
the book takes place in the year 2161, which is roughly 130 some years in the future. Even
Right.
then, he says, well, people may anthropomorphize the machine. They come in contact with these robots and these AIs, and they kind of feel like they're talking to a real person, but that's just cheap tricks all the way down. It's not really consciousness.
Yeah.
What is real consciousness? What's that I that is us that we think of? And so this guy goes off to a small college on sabbatical, and then the story evolves. It's actually a love story, an adventure, and it explores this issue through these characters of what is consciousness. And the other half of this is that the reason I placed this book that far in the future is that I
I was
think
going to
it
ask that question. Why that particular day? Hmm.
yeah. So I think if you look at the technology we have today, you might agree with this premise that it's highly likely in 100 to 140 years that AIs will be embedded in robots, and the robots will be walking around among us, and they'll be doing many of the jobs.
Uh-huh.
They'll be ubiquitous because when robots build the robot factories that build the robots, you, Leigh, could have 20 robots doing stuff for you, and everyone else could too.
Yeah.
And so we'll have like lots of stuff, but we won't have any jobs. And so, how do we find meaning and purpose in
Mm.
that world? And my argument is that at some point, not soon, but at some point, that will be highly likely,
Yeah.
if not inevitable, that all those jobs will go away. And so, how do we find meaning and purpose when, no one
What
can
do we
have a
do?
job?
What do we do?
Yeah, what do we do? So in this scenario, which again I argue from a hard science point of view is highly likely that we will, having a job might be a privilege.
Yeah.
There will be cool jobs. So, for example, in that book, there's a person, Dina Taggart, and Dina she has a job of being managing a space station that has a orbit around the moon, and it launches exoplanet probes to discover other possible worlds that we could inhabit. Now, that would be a very cool job, but
Mm.
she has 1,000 robots working for her, and everyone by law at that time is constrained to only work 3 days a week of 4 hours or 12 hours a week because otherwise there wouldn't be enough jobs to go around.
Yeah.
So, so having a job is actually sort of a privilege, and so I'm trying to imagine that kind of world.
It's interesting how science fiction from the past. I remember growing up watching science fiction and how a lot of that's become our reality. And, your future, I guess, fiction of how the world could look, is likely to come to fruition too, right?
Yeah, I think so. And but I would say I like you. I love the the classic world, the golden age of science fiction. People like Bradbury and Isaac Asimov. What I particularly liked about many of those books is that they actually tried hard to get the science right, to imagine what the world might be. So I think
Mm,
Bradbury imagined geosynchronous satellites, and that's of course very we've had thousands of them, right? So,
yeah.
but I think what's happened is that many science fiction writers have found it very difficult to kind of keep up with the technology because the technology is evolving so
Yeah.
rapidly. So,
Hmm.
in 2007, we got the iPhone. If you wrote a book before 2007, you might have missed completely how that changed our world.
Yeah.
And so the future that you would imagine is completely wrong. And
Yep.
so it's harder. And so I think a lot of science fiction has moved to science fiction and fantasy. You got dragons. Yeah, of course, you still have faster than light spaceships. I mean, we all like the entertainment of the Star Wars and the Star Trek kind of storylines, but they don't help us imagine what the future might actually be like. And so
Based on
what I
what we're seeing today.
yeah, and so based upon my actually great fortune to have put my toe into many of these technologies
Mm,
in the last 25 years, I think I have a good sense and I have, contacts with a lot of people and I keep up on these technologies. And so to I think maybe have a better sense of how it might evolve because certain things take longer than we ever imagined to get to market. So I might ask you, when do you think robots will actually be walking around really in Australia, okay,
streets,
doing
yeah.
most of the jobs? Well, I mean, pick a decade. What do you think?
I wouldn't have a clue, but I would say in the next 50 years, most likely.
Okay, but then how many jobs will they do in 50 years?
How many jobs? Well, geez, I don't know. We're already seeing AI take away a lot of jobs. So when we already see robots and robotics take away a lot of jobs, right?
Yes,
In the
right.
factories and all that. So how fast it'll advance, how fast it's advancing now, um, they'd take many, they're already taking many of the jobs, 50% of the jobs, let's say.
Well, yeah, okay. So that's why it's an interesting question. So you said 50 years, that would be
Mm,
2075. Okay. Yeah, pretty good. Some folks have been talking about, robots taking all the jobs away in 10 years or something, and AI taking away all the jobs in the next five
yeah.
years, and we're going to
Mm,
have this singularity, which I think is sort of nonsense.
yeah.
I think it will
Why do you
take
think
longer.
that?
Well, I think some of the jobs will be hard. So um, and so I'll segue just to say I never planned to write a prequel, and then
Yeah.
some of the fans of the first book said, "Geez, that's what was it? Cheese Single Magazine said it's eerily authentic." And then some of the fans were asking me, "Well, how did we get there?" And so having not planned to write a prequel, I actually wrote a prequel, and that's Journey to 2125.
Okay.
That's the next 100 years between now and 2125.
Yep.
And for example, in that book, there is one of the characters, and he's a roofer. Okay, climbs up on
Yep.
the roof, has to remove the shingles, replace the roof, putting all that sort of stuff on. And I argue in the book, well, that's a job that's highly likely to be around for a while.
Yeah.
You need a robot that is nimble enough to get up there. It's hard to imagine that you can do that in as many automated ways as many other kind of jobs. And but what happens when the roofer job goes away, right? What happens when there's a robot that is nimble enough and the economics work well enough that it makes sense to replace that roofer with a machine, and the robot learns the roofing job, and at that point, once one robot knows how to replace a roof, then all robots know how to replace a roof, and it's all over for roofers. And then how does that person in that job feel when, something that is harder to replace, right?
Mm.
And it is based more on physical labor than mental acuity, which we might worry that the robots will take away first.
Yeah.
But when the last job standing is gone, what happens? Then what do we
Yeah.
do?
Mm. Physical jobs, right? So yeah, harder to imagine being replaced sooner.
Yeah. So and
Administration
actually,
jobs, I mean, we're already seeing that getting replaced a lot by AI. But then I'd look
yeah.
at housing and other options rather than robots doing roofings. Why couldn't we have something that gets put in place to 3D print the roof or
Yes.
constructed on site?
Yeah, there's companies that are pouring full, robotic driven cement houses that they pour off of a model and they just set the equipment up and it pours the whole house here in the United States. I know they've got a company in Texas that's doing that, and they're actually looking to rebuild some of the houses that were destroyed in the Palisades fire in LA using that technology. So
Mm,
yeah. So yes, that will replace a lot of carpenters and other kinds of trades. And you probably
yeah.
see that in Australia too, right?
Yeah. Well, not yet, really. I haven't. No. I'm in real
Okay.
estate.
Okay. Okay. By the way, in Journey to 2125, I have a scene that takes place off of Bondi Beach, but this takes place in let's see, 2040, and there's completely self-driving cars that drive you from the beach up to your house, and
Mm.
all those taxi drivers are gone away in Australia too. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I see that happening. Definitely. I mean, it's already happening in your city, right? Like I went there a couple of years ago and saw their self-driving cars cruising around.
Yeah, today they have these Waymos, and literally I have driven up 2 blocks and seen 5 of them.
Yep.
That's how ubiquitous they are, and they are pretty darn good at driving, actually.
They seem to be.
They're predictable. So,
So what about like, you talked about the iPhone coming out 2007. Um, we had the computer. Now we've got AI. Do you see some more major unknown advances coming other than what we already know? Because it's hard to predict all that stuff, right?
yeah, it's very hard. Actually, so my first book came out in 2020. The
Hmm.
GPT moment happened in November 2022. Um, Within a year, there were 192 AI companies in San Francisco. I just checked. There are now 1,000 AI companies in San Francisco. So this is booming with that technology.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone thinks that these things are going to be doing everything tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have on my phone, I have actually 10 AIs. Okay, and I was talking. I have a friend, Tom Mitchell, runs the machine learning center at Carnegie Mellon, and
Uh-huh.
he was out visiting last month, and we were talking about ChatGPT. And I don't know if anyone has downloaded that onto your phone. You can get it for free. It
Yeah.
has a chat that you can just talk to. And he says, I just talk to that in my car when I'm commuting because he's also exploring the technology and trying to understand the limits. But
Yeah.
you can learn a lot of stuff from that. Will it go to the next level?
Hmm.
Will it do what is in the Silicon Valley types that are just promoting this like crazy? Would suggest we'll have agentic, which they're talking about actually having, and
Yeah.
then organizational kind of level AI. So you might say something like, geez, analyze all the kind of flavored water businesses in Australia. Figure out all the different flavors, develop a business plan and a marketing plan and a taste flavored taste that fits a niche that's uncovered. Give me the marketing plan, give me the production detail so that I can build the company.
Yeah.
And and they honestly are pitching that that is around the corner and that you can build a company with 1,000 employees and that will work, right? So
Yeah. I
now,
get
will that
that.
happen? Will that happen? It is the technology today. If you ask it to do that sort of thing, it does write really nice, marketing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, will it actually be successful, or will it hallucinate such that you will be going down some kind of squirrel hole and you'll have a total failure? No one has a full opinion on that. I'm sort of a
What's your
naysayer.
opinion? Yeah,
Yeah,
I sort of see it as, yeah, okay, that's great, and I can see that AI can do that, but to take it from that to actual activity and action and execution, we'll still need someone to drive it, and you'll need a lot of different factors in the market that are external to what chat can produce for you to help it come off the ground as well, right? Like it's,
exactly. I agree. It's going to take, and so I think that that technology, I think that AI, so this is the hard one for me because when you're trying to write a hard science book about the future and you have this near future technology right now
hmm,
that there are, all kinds of opinions and no one really knows, right?
yeah,
But you have to put a stake in the ground about how fast you think it will evolve and what change it will have. And so what I think is one opinion among many is that it will be very impactful on lots of things, and it will change jobs dramatically, and there will be lots of new jobs. Lots of jobs will disappear. I think that this particular wave of AI will not net dramatically change the unemployment rate.
yeah,
And in fact, I'm on the board of the Santa Fe Institute that does complexity and nonlinear dynamics and collaborative research. And we
hmm,
were in a discussion a year ago, yeah, last fall, and I told some people who are the top AI researchers. They've been in the field for like 30 years.
yeah.
And there's a number of folks who are a little bit cynical about this. And I said, tell me what in 5 years, how much will the unemployment rate change from what it is today based on AI? And surprisingly to me was that it was basically universal. No one thought it would materially move the unemployment rate for this wave of AI. That's kind of encouraging, right? So, and so, I mean, I subscribe to that view.
Is that
But
because it'll create at the same time more jobs anyway and different opportunities?
exactly,
So it'll
exactly.
replace some, and some things will be driven by AI, but other things will be needed to be created for humans to
Ex
operate. Hmm.
Exactly. And then what you said just a moment ago, Leigh, about that we'll still need people in the loop for all kinds of stuff. Salespeople will still need to sell face to face for corporate and everything else. Doctors still will have to give patient personal um, uh, coverage, right? And care. And you can go on and on like this. That there'll be a lot of kind of jobs that we need people in the loop. So that's what I believe. But I
Hmm.
also think that we have to be careful because if we get through this wave and it's at 10 years from down the line, everyone said, yeah, see, everyone was talking about the loss of jobs and it didn't happen. But what happens, and you said 50 years, but sometime that's in the second half of this century, and I think that's what I think, that when AIs are embodied in robots and robots are walking around among us and they're doing more and more of the jobs and they're embedded in the environment, when that happens, they will collect another kind of data embedded in the world. And the reason that's important, in back to philosophy of mine and the whole philosophical side of the argument,
Hmm.
there's an idea of part of the thing that's key to our consciousness is being embedded in the world. We have a sense of what it is like to live. We what is it like to taste an apple, right? There's something in philosophy mind called qualia. It's that what is it like feeling? And there's a belief among the philosophers that that's very important to consciousness. And so and so I'm not suggesting that robots will become conscious when they walk around, because I don't actually think that either. But I think that they'll collect a whole other order of data and that they'll get better and better. And then they'll start to then replace jobs. And then that issue of robots building robot factories that make more robots, and you can have millions and millions of robots. And then I think that there is a serious danger that there'll be a tsunami of job losses, but that's not now. So
So that's sort of
part of
talking
the
100 years from now.
yeah, and so that's why this recent book, Journey to 2125,
Hmm.
it really asks the question, what are the real challenges of this next century? And I think that is one of them, is that maybe not this wave of AI, but the AI and robotic wave is the one where I think it'll dramatically take away jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are talking that it's going to, change things dramatically within the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
I think Elon Musk even says, like, in the next 10 years, we'll have robots in the home doing things for us.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, what does that really mean? I mean, you have to ask yourself, when is that affordable? When do you get the weights down? When do you have batteries that are light enough? When does it actually make sense to spend that money for that? And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's lots of questions there. And there's a gentleman at MIT, and he invented the Roomba. I don't know if you have Roombas in Australia,
Hmm.
the little robotic sweeper that runs around your
Yeah.
house by
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he, early robotics, very famous in the field. And we were at a conference, and he said, I thought that would be like a slam dunk. That's why we started that. It took 10 years
Yeah.
to make that
There you go.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to actually, do
And
the
I'm still not
engineering and
sure if they're
launch
that
it.
effective, but that's kind of the basic level of robotics that we're talking about. We're not talking about, someone that can actually cook your dinner and fold your clothes and hang out your washing and do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
for example, in Journey to 2125, I've been seeing that takes place, I think, in 2050. And there are care robots, and they happen to be in this story deployed in Japan, which we know has a demographic problem with aging population, shrinking population, elderly people that do not have and will face declining ability to have people take care of them. And that's why Japan is already looking at robots to help. So I got a scene where there's a robot that is supposed to be taking care of someone, and bad things happen because
Yeah.
because it's hard to um, deal with all
Replicate
the
human.
unknown unknowns. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
I mean, I see tech now and AI as really more of a solution to the overwhelm that we have put on ourselves as a human race. Like we have calendar management, emails to manage, more and more that we put on our plates, and AI sort of helps to go, okay, well, this will help us streamline that so we can actually take on more. And I see that as a fundamental problem of humanity right now.
yeah. Because we want to speed up the crank, right? And we're living faster and faster, and not paying attention to actually day to day what is living, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
How do you see
yeah.
that play out?
Well, in the first book, I said Unfettered Journey takes place in the far future. AI, the Joe, who's the AI scientist, this, he can think of, to take some of those trends today. You've got social media constantly. I mean, people are in the United States. I just read that younger folks are spending over 4 hours a day still on social media. I was hoping that that would be dying out, but it's not. Okay.
No, it's crazy.
It's and people are addicted to TikTok and everything else. How does that help you get a clear head to actually focus on what it is like to be human and being alive? So the book opens with the scene where the Joe is confronting his own AI, and I won't exactly give a total spoiler about what happens, but
Right.
you can imagine where the technology goes. So we have our phone, we carry our phone around with us, right, all the time. And where does that go next? So in in these two books, I explore that path. In Silicon Valley, there's a belief that they'll become more wearable. You can imagine that you might have an interface that is a contact lens, so you can actually see stuff on the screen in your
Yeah.
eye. You can imagine you have augmented reality, and there's already things like that. But
Hmm.
you can imagine that works better. Maybe it's embedded in a pair of glasses, a wearable. You're walking around there in Brisbane, and you say, "Geez, I feel like a pizza. Where's the nearest pizza thing?" And you say it out loud, and the AI puts a little map on your contact lens, and it gives you a little red line. You follow that all around, and you find the pizza shop, right? As soon
Hmm.
as you do that, you arrive at the pizza shop. Guess what happens? Ka-ching! There's an Australian dollar to get paid to whoever the technology is. buy the pizza shop because you let them there.
Yeah.
That's billions of dollars of potential economic value in Australia alone, and someone's going to do that. So
I
now
mean,
you
we,
can
we, we
imagine,
look at
yeah.
voice activation like saying, okay, well, where's the pizza shop? I feel like pizza. But it might get to a point where you're just thinking it, right? You're just saying, okay, without actually
Uh,
speaking.
okay, well, good question. So how does the technology evolve? What I think, and by the way, and I think you're referencing actually something, Neuralink, which is another one of the Elon Musk
Yeah.
companies, where you have
Mm.
this embedded thing in your head. Um, Uh, And so what I try to do in terms of technology is take what I think is a realistic hard science view of it. So what I imagine by 21, 25
Mm.
is that no, that's not so ubiquitous. That's that we human beings have evolved the visual cortex of your brain, the V1, which is on the back of your brain,
Right.
over a million years.
Mm.
That's remarkably efficient. Audio is another very efficient system. There is, but you have a little embedded in your skull. I mean, there's lots of issues with keeping it clean and not getting infections in your brain, et cetera, et cetera. I imagine what might happen is, yes, it'll help people that are impaired in medical ways, and it'll be helpful. Quite,
Mm.
but for the average person walking around, I imagine that in kindergarten you learn to train that AI that is a chip, embedded, tied to actually a corneal implant. You go from contact lens to a corneal implant. So
Right.
yes, and you can do the pizza trick that I just mentioned, and it's fine. And you're actually talking to a chip that's embedded because you don't have to carry anything around. But so I imagine a scene at the beginning of Unfettered Journey where
Mm.
Joe is on an airplane, and the social protocol is you don't kind of talk out loud when you're in a public space like that. It's sort of
Yeah.
considered rude. So you have 50 keywords that you memorize as a child, and you can think, search and look something up.
Yeah.
And then the AI will have read that part of your brain. But that's limited because it's so darn slow.
Mm.
So yes, it'll happen, but it's so I want to push back on some of, I think, the more fantastical ideas that we're
Like
going to upload brains.
integration of tech to the human brain is pretty hard to imagine.
I think so. I think that just takes you off on this deep and absurdity to the technology, and I don't think that will happen. There's another character in Unfettered Journey, and she's talking about cyborgs, right? She says, well, come on, yes, you lose a leg, it's replaced. You've got a good leg, but we're still human. I mean,
Mm.
yes, the medical technology has evolved to do lots of cool things, but we're still fundamentally human. We're going to do the same kinds of things we do even 140 years in the future.
Yeah. Talk about meaning and purpose. I mean, you just mentioned a figure of, 4 hours a day on social media for younger people. I don't see the meaning and purpose in spending 4 hours a day on that. But if that's the way our future looks and we're integrating tech and robots and AI more and more into our life, does it mean we're just going to start to go, okay, well, what do I do? I'll just spend more time looking at what other people are doing and, you know, I guess nothing that's necessarily productive.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
entertaining, maybe educational. I think
yeah,
it has a place, but
yeah. So that's the one of the fundamental questions posed by my first book, Unfettered Journey, is how do we find meaning and purpose in a
mm,
world when you have so little work opportunities? But I also imagine, you have the basics of human needs taken care of because there should be a lot of stuff. If you run the economics forward and just take, global GDP growth and, Australian and the United States global GDP growth, and you figure out where those numbers take us, even without an enormous increase by AI and robotics helping, we're still going to have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times as much stuff per capita as we have today.
mm.
So there'll be lots of stuff to go around. One issue is, well, how is that larger pie divided, and is that divided fairly? How's the economic system
Well, that's
work?
interesting, isn't it? Like if we've got less job opportunities, less ability to work, how do we fund our lifestyles?
Yes. Well, how do you
Or are
divide?
we being run by bigger corporations?
Yes. Yeah. 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 And that became a topic in Journey to 2125. How do we get from here to there? And I think that one of the challenges is that the economic system has to evolve from something at least slightly, but I think a little bit more than slightly different than what we have now.
Hmm.
And what is that? And how do we manage that transition so that we don't fall into negative scenarios, right? There's lots of negative scenarios. The
Hmm.
French Revolution again on spades because it just seems unfair fundamentally.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you see that play out? Like, how do you see people adjusting to these massive changes? Or maybe more the question should be, what do you see as the challenges so it doesn't go sour and it's actually conducive to having a good human life?
Okay. Okay. Well, that's a great question to segue to another. So I'll call it a little bit of a literary device because, fiction has to have some conflict.
Hmm.
And so what I imagine happens in Journey to 2125 that get us there is that by about 75 years, by about the year 2100, sometime like that, we will have robots taking all the jobs. And so then the question is, who owns the robot factories? And the answer in my book, which is maybe it's a negative approach, but it's maybe argues about what we have to avoid. The result is that there is there's a lots of turmoil as suddenly people are out of work and it's getting to be sort of dystopian in many ways. And what happens is there is the robot companies are nationalized. Everyone owns them. So in some sense, that part of the means of production are owned by everyone collectively.
Right.
But the quid pro quo for that is that there is enacted a series of levels acts, and the levels act set up a hierarchy from one at the top to 99 at the bottom, and supposedly it'll be based on merit. And there are these levels, and you have a level, and so you get certain benefits from being at a certain level. So
Hmm.
you can imagine that as this goes in as the quid pro quo for this nationalization, that the folks that own the robot factories have much higher levels than everyone else. And supposedly it's meritocratic, it can move up and down, but there's a suspicion that there's certainly a lot of legacy built in. And so I use that device
Can
in the
only
first book
imagine.
to,
Yeah.
yeah. So I use that device to explore the idea, to ask the question, do we have levels today?
Kind of we do, right? But not dictated by someone.
Right. I mean, you probably have them in Australia too. I mean, there's certain levels of society. Clearly, in England, 100 years ago, they had a very much a leveled society, right? Um,
How do the levels get defined in the future?
well, so again, the idea is that they're supposedly meritocratic, but there are limits. They ultimately have evolved into a caste sort of system that it limits who can travel, who can marry who. You can't marry anyone who's more than 20 levels different than you, and you can imagine sort of a
So
problem
kind
with
of
all
like a
this.
grading system, a personal grading system to,
Yeah, and in fact, I think China already has such a thing that's
I
being put
believe
in
so.
place. Yeah,
Hmm.
they have there's a social score. If you're
Crazy.
jaywalking, you get negative points. If you are showing up maybe protesting too much, you get negative points. And actually, you can't travel there from place to place, as I understand it, freely because you're limited to certain areas, and you can't move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big problems with all that, I reckon.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already seeing like what's stopping someone sabotaging someone else in their scoring system or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Rather than addressing it or understanding the specific situation that is sometimes out of someone's direct control, then
Yes.
influencing their score, which then fundamentally puts them down or puts them up unfairly.
Yeah, yeah. So that's actually so I Journey to 2125, the prequel that I just wrote, it
Hmm.
gets us to how do we get to that system? and I have some, evil politicians, etc., in the mix, and you can imagine the storyline
Yeah.
where we get to that point that actually you can imagine a level system being enacted even in the United States. And and then in the first book, I really explore that the main character Joe is a level 42. Okay. Um, uh, which anyone in science fiction might recognize, and from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is what the answer to the secret of the universe and all that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, uh, and so that book explores that, unfairness, if you will, and then how do you create a sort of an equality of opportunity in a future world where we have a lot of stuff, actually.
Mm. The social implications of this future. How do you see that looking like? What I mean, we're already seeing fairly significant divide. You know, you're either on that side or you're on this side, and that's playing out more and more now
Yeah.
that
Are you
we're
seeing that? Are you seeing that in Australia?
yeah, yep.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I mean, there's massive news happening. You know, yesterday there was something that was quite shaking globally
Yes.
with
Yes.
Charlie
Yes.
Kirk, right? And
Yes.
and you could
Yes.
already see as soon as you jumped onto social media the divide
Yes.
and people
Yes.
choosing sides. And if this is, I could only see that becoming more and more paramount. And potentially people actually really just disconnecting from this whole world of tech and AI,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and
So
being one sort of side, and then the other group being more futuristic and let's, go with it.
yeah. So are you positive, negative about the next 100 years? Where do you come out?
I'm very positive in nature, so I think it's always going to be positive and it's going to be fascinating. And I'd love to live forever so I could see it all. That's how I look at it, right? But I mean, you look back at history, there's been so many things that have evolved the way society is. A lot of negative things as well. But
Mhm.
look at the positives of where we are today and what we have and what we can be grateful for. Most of us,
Okay.
not
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm in your camp. I'm an optimist too. I think that this here's the premise of this latest book is that technology is moving faster than ever. That that more change will happen in this next century than happened in the prior century. Okay. And and that it's going to be more of a challenge. And there are some major challenges this century. I think that if you started to ask a bunch of people what they worry about, you would have 50 things. I will argue that there are a few things that we really should focus on, and that what we need to do as human beings this century is we have to focus on those few really important ones, and we have to solve them. We can't kick them down the road.
What are you
And
saying
so,
as those few important things?
well, that's the meta theme for Journey to 2125. How do we get through this century? And I do believe we'll kind of muddle through, but so the book is mostly about how we successfully do it, and it points out a few things where we are, partly successful and what we have to worry about. The levels acts, how we replace the system um, economically is one of the negatives, in the book. But yeah, I think um, well, let's start with close by in Australia, wide scale nuclear war. Okay. That China, for example, will take back Taiwan, claiming it as its rightful province, and that could lead to wide-scale nuclear war.
Hmm.
There is that book opens with the scene there, and actually, there's a reference to a book that I read a long time ago called "On the Beach," which happens in the ending scene in Melbourne on the beach. Still gives me chills today when I
Right.
when I think about it. So this fear of still nuclear wide-scale war, if we have the powers that have all these nuclear weapons, US, China, um, Russia, others are adding to them. And if we destroy, 20 cities on each side, that will set back humanity for a century.
Right.
That's one. The second one is climate change.
Yeah.
And the reason I said that one second is because if the first one it happens, it will probably not leave enough wealth and resources to fight climate change successfully this century, and that then is an existential risk.
Mhm.
So we have to figure out how to actually deal with climate change in a thoughtful way and stay on the page of solving it as opposed to in the last couple of years of making
Mm.
some backward moves. So um, and then you have, as I said, AI and robotics. How do we deal with this transition as those become more ubiquitous?
Yeah.
How do we deal with privacy and democracy? How do we protect democracy in places like Australia and the United
Mm.
States
Mm.
and around the world? That that is a theme in the book.
Yeah. I sort of see technology and democracy and all that. I totally agree with, but because it's developing so rapidly, our human mind and body isn't able to develop that quick.
Yes,
And I
yes,
see a big gap there as the problems currently exist and where they're going to go as something that really needs to be focused on. And we already see it with health and depression and mental anxiety, all those things, it's having a big toll on society. But then the social constructs of everything that's happening right now as well, it's like nuclear, right? You would
yes.
hope to God's name that nothing would ever come of that. But it seems like now it's just like, well, we're getting to a point where we don't care. We'll just do what we want on the
Uh-huh.
individual level and on the national level.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I think Australia is buying some nuclear-powered submarines from the United States. I think they're supposed to be deployed, in 2030, I think, something like
Yeah.
that,
Mm.
2032. Those ones will not be um, armed with nuclear missiles, but who knows, right?
Who
You're,
knows?
you're going to have them patrolling the waters off Brisbane.
Yeah. They're yeah, interesting conversation, interesting topics, and certainly something to think about. On the playful level, I think it's really great, these books. But on the deeper thought of the future of humanity, I think it's really important to have these books and these conversations out there as well. So thanks for coming on, Gary, today.
Yeah.
If people want to reach out to you, connect, where would they go?
Yes, I can go to my author website. It's garyfbengier.com, Bengier,
Yeah.
garyfbengier.com. And they can find my books, Journey to 2125 and Unfettered Journey, every place you buy books. Journey to 2125, I'm very pleased. Just last month, and again, it just came out last year, it won the NIEA Best Visionary Fiction Novel of
Wow.
this year, 2025. So I'm very pleased with that.
Congratulations. That's
And
amazing.
and the first book, 20 Unfettered Journey, as I said, has won 14 book awards. So I'm very pleased with both of those. And I got a great audio book out on Journey to 2125. It's all over the place. It has 10 voice actors. My first book, Unfettered Journey, also has an audio book. A
Wow.
great a great Kiwi Shakespearean voice actor who did the voice on that one. So
That's
yes,
amazing.
please take a look at the books.
The term you used earlier in this interview was repotting yourself, and you're an inspiration for that because of your background and then going back to study and then now writing these books. Phenomenal. So, very inspirational, and congratulations on the books and the awards.
Well, thanks very much. I've been delighted to be here with you. Thanks so much.
Guys, you can check it all out at thehiddenwhy.com. Links for Gary will be in the show notes there as well. Make sure you tune in, grab a couple of the books, and until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. Speak again. Cool. So, what a conversation, hey? It went for longer than we planned, but a very insightful, curious conversation about the future of technology. Would love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you comment. Let us know what your key takeaways were from this conversation. You can check out all the show notes, including the links to Gary at thehiddenwhy.com. His books are available there as well. Support the show by using the links within the show notes. That'd be great, guys. And as always, here to help you live more fully, have more meaning, and find more journey. Would love to set up time with you if you're looking to find a bit more deeper meaning, purpose in your life. Make sure you reach out to myself and let's set up time to chat. You guys have a great week ahead. Until the next episode, peace, passion, and purpose. Speak soon.